Alright, let me check my microphones. Are those working? Yes, they are. Perfect. Alright. Hi, everybody. Welcome today. We are going to be doing drones, intro to drones. My name is Saxon. I am your camera teacher. Like always, thanks for joining. Intro to drones or drone basics. I've got one student with me today in class, so I've got somebody here to keep me awake and keep me present. It's a pretty quick class. I go through everything pretty fast. So for the last 30 minutes of class, I'll open it up to questions. Class does go till 7. I have another photo engagement right after class over here in the store, so if there's any questions that I don't have time to get to, please by all means email, call me. My number and my email will be in the last slide. So without further ado, let's get into it a little bit. Pull this up so that I can see it. That'll be better for my student as well. All right. So drone basics. The very first thing, where to go when all else fails. I always like to do this. Start by reading the owner's manual. That's always the first thing to do. But for the most part, a lot of these drones, a lot of these products don't come with any type of owner's manual, user's guide, or anything. So the best thing with the drone is the second that you open and start your drone up for the first time, it'll run you through a tutorial of everything. It'll show you how to take off, how to safely land. It'll give you updates about geofencing, location stuff. That way you know what parameters to be aware of when you fly. It'll tell you minor video settings on there, so depending if you have drones that have active track or let's say the forms of video quality, stabilization, frame rates, all of that is customizable on the screen. And as you touch on the screen, it'll affect the drone. Again, as soon as you pull it out of the box and get it all going, it'll give you everything that you need to know. Also, sorry everybody for being today. I was taking photos downstairs before I got up here. YouTube is my second favorite option. If you can't figure it out, YouTube is the best place to go. I have students who ask me millions of questions sometimes, and what I can do is to send them 5 videos and get it right away. YouTube is a great source. It's free too. If there is someone on YouTube you like, you can always subscribe, donate. There's a bunch of different ways that you can contribute to their creation. And then Masterclass. As far as drones go, that might not be the most important anymore. I probably have to find something new to put on there. But with cameras, I had a lot of people with cameras who were really interested in learning more, hearing what other people were doing, and I always said Masterclass is a really good option. There are a lot of professionals that use it, that teach on there. Through the pandemic, it became a really awesome tool, and it is a subscription service from what I remember, but overall, I think it is worth it if you're someone who really wants to learn about the product and get better with it. So the first thing we're going to talk about is where do your pictures and videos go, and make sure you have 2 of them. SD cards. So unless you're looking at something like the Mavic 3 Classic or the Mavic 3 Pro, most drones and flying drones, I should say, most drones have 0 storage. They do that on purpose. They want you, the user, the customer, they want you to make sure that you're getting storage that best fits your needs. Don't jump too deep into the SD cards because typically it would take an entire video to really get through them. But my recommendation for video projects is you should be doing something at least 120 gigabytes. When you think about it, a 4K video at a, let's say, 60 frames per second rate, you're probably looking at about 140 minutes worth of record time, 130 minutes worth of record time on a 128 gigabyte SD card. So 256 might be better. You can even find 512s out there for the micro SD cards, and I've even heard of a 1 terabyte card. I've never used one. Really trust a 1 terabyte amount of information on a very small, fragile SD card. The other important thing you want to look at is fast read and write speed. So on there you'll see sometimes V speed for certain brands. You might also see 70 megabytes or something with the MB-S. You'll also see R and W on a lot of these cards. That is the read and the write speed. So the speed at which it writes, and then the speed at which it reads the information. So the faster you can get in your budget for those, the better it'll help the video quality really transcend. It's very similar to if you have a 4K television and you have, let's say, an Apple TV that plays in 4K. You plug in a standard HDMI cable, the video quality is shaky, it's so-so, but you put in a 4K gold-plated SD or a 4K HDMI cable on the unit, and you get the better video from both the source and the TV. Same idea with your SD cards. So the more money you invest in the SD cards, the nicer quality you get, the better your videos look and perform on the back end of things. And when I say make sure you have two, let me go back one slide. The reason I say that is because when you're using these, errors can occur and problems can happen. I had a photo shoot one time where I was helping a friend do a project they were doing, and I brought one SD card with me, and it completely failed, didn't work, didn't save any of the information, and when they asked me about all the photos, I had nothing for them. And I didn't have time to really go back and take more pictures, so they were disappointed, to say the least. So have two of them, have two with you at all times. It's a good safety precaution. Just in case one doesn't work, you've always got a second one that you can go to. My favorite quote, and I share it every single class: the bitterness of poor quality remains long after the sweetness of a low price is forgotten. As great as a deal is, sometimes good deals can be too good to be true. Photography is one of those art forms that you need to put money into it. The more money you put into it, the better products you're going to get as a byproduct of it. I've got friends that use Crayola crayons to make art, and they sell it for hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then I've got people who try to take pictures with a not-so-great camera, and it just does not fit the bill. So again, art is subjective in all cases, but if you are someone who's trying to get the best quality, the best performance out of something, always consider that the price and the actual quality of the piece that you're getting are two very separate things, and to keep that in mind. Good thing to save money when you can, but when it comes down to it, the more money you put into photography, the better the byproduct become. So getting back into the SD cards, your photos and videos should never live on your memory card. When I say that, I have people that like to save and keep SD cards and keep all the files on there, but then I also have people that only put it on the computer. My school of thought, and we'll talk about it in the next slides, is that you should have multiple places that the photo should live. But to start off, to make sure you don't lose your pictures or damage your card, the first thing you want to do is land your drone, turn the unit off. For the most part, on most of the drones, you got a turn to home button. Once you click it, the drone will come back to where it took off. It'll drop in front of you. Let it sit for 5 seconds for two reasons. One, let the video file save and everything to process properly. But two, those blades can hurt. They might not cut you, but if you go to touch the drone while the blades are still moving, it will hurt really bad. So wait 5 seconds after you land, make sure it turns off. Then the unit off, make sure everything's done. Remove the physical card and put the card into the card reader. Now, with drones, it's always a little bit different because a lot of the drones will actually allow you to save the video files on your phone. I did the Chicago Polar Plunge not long ago. I was flying a Mavic Mini 2 around, and while I was doing it, I was able to actually save the videos right from the app that the drone was using right to my phone. Great for in-the-moment stuff, great for social media stuff. As far as the video quality, getting the most, what's the term I'm looking for, the best version of the video possible, you want to make sure you're saving it to the SD card, and you want to make sure that you're putting that SD card in the computer to read it. Now you can use your camera or your drone to read the cards or send the pictures, but you shouldn't. The only reason I say that is because if there's any issue where the drone malfunctions as it's plugged into the computer, now you've got a problem where the drone possibly corrupted your card, and then now the card might be unusable. So my school of thought is always take the card out and put it into the computer, just so that way you avoid connections. Because basically the card is your first connection, your drone is your second connection, and then your source is the computer. So you've got two connections going to one source, and if either one of those connections fails on you, then you have nothing to show for it. And the possibility of losing your images is like, let's say, 20% greater. So maybe not a huge number, but if there is something that can I've had it before too when I've had a camera plugged in, transferring photos. A cousin or dog walked by on accident and they knocked the cable from the camera. Well, for some reason, the camera wasn't able to finish processing, so it deleted everything that I just did. And I lost everything I did for that day. So take the SD card out, take that extra step, put it into a card reader and put it into your computer. Again, there might be nothing that happens, but preventing or doing things to prevent those types of accidents from happening will be better in the long run. These are examples of card readers. There's so many out there. These are 4 different ones that we carry here in the store. My personal favorite is the middle one. It's called a Trifecta. I like it because it's, number 1, the cheapest that we carry. But then number 2, it's USB-A and USB-C on both ends. So it almost looks like a flash drive. So depending on the computer you're going into, it should fit both. On the flip side of it, it does micro SD cards and standard SD cards. So for us, being in the drone class right now, micro is going to be one of the most important. The 2 readers on the right side are more CF Express or Cine editions, so they won't really do SD cards. So it's important that you get something that does and is capable of reading the micro SD. So I like Trifecta. I think it's a good way to go. The USB hub is nice on the very end. It is more expensive than the Trifecta, but you can charge 3 devices off of it at the same time, and then you've got your standard SD card, a CF Express, and then a micro SD. So I believe that's probably like $100 if I had to guess. But the ability to charge 3 other devices, especially if you have a computer that has limited ports, that might be a really nice option to look at. But make sure you get an SD card reader is the moral of my story. And then next thing we want to do is we want to copy photos to a destination folder. We don't move, we copy. Now, when I say copy, I mean you're going to make a duplicate copy of the photos from the SD card over into a file folder somewhere. So if you're using Mac, you're going to use Finder. If you're using Explorer, or if you're using Windows, you're using Explorer. What you want to first do, and what I like to do, is I create a folder on the computer, and I'll maybe label it the day I took photos. My usual school of thought is I put everything in month folders. So I do December 2022, December 2021. And when you go through my hard drives, I basically have all my folders labeled by years. And then as I click on that, I then have the subject of here are all my months. And then for the most part, I forgot what the term is, but your camera is smart enough to automatically program a time and date stamp on the physical image and video. So when you go into information, you can see at what day of the week you shot this, what month you shot this, all that. So if you don't want to be organized, or you're someone that doesn't work like that, I have to compartmentalize everything, even on my phone. All of my apps are in folders, and they're each labeled productivity, work, social media. I have everything ready to go. I do the same thing with my photos. But regardless, when you do that, copy them, don't move them. You want to make sure you have multiple copies of these. When you're transferring a lot of photos from one SD card to the computer, what can tend to happen is, let's say the computer messes up something, just like if a drone is connected in and you're reading off the SD card, there can be issues. Same thing can happen when you try to move all photos onto the computer when the SD card's in there. It could glitch, the computer could die on you, it could maybe not read right, and if you move them, now you're taking them from one folder and putting them to the computer, so that transfer can get messed up. And if it gets messed up, the chances of you losing your photos and videos are higher. So all this is just trying to find preventative measures, so that way, when you're doing all this stuff, you have less of a chance of losing all this work that you did. So copy things from your SD card over, don't move them. After you've copied them onto the computer, you always want to have a second place. I recommend 2 different things, either an external hard drive or some form of cloud computing, and then I put Prime Photos Google Drive. I didn't know about Prime Photos, the customer who brought it to my attention. If you subscribe to Amazon Prime, you automatically get a free photo storage and video storage. It's called Prime Photos. You don't have to pay anything extra for it, and it's all cloud-based, so you can just sign in wherever you're at and get into it. Same thing with Google Drive. If you've got a Gmail, you're probably already familiar with Google Drive. Both are awesome options if you're someone who is okay with signing in on a desktop to get all your information. I personally use the external hard drives. I have two of them. I have one that's set in front of my computer, and that's one that I constantly plug in, and then I have one that is safe. God forbid, I'm going to knock on wood, if my house ever burned down or anything were to happen, I like the idea of knowing that at least, I mean, at this point, I have 20 years worth of artwork. I know for a fact that 20 years worth of art that I've done from being a child to my 20s is all there and all safe and protected just in case. So I like the double hard drive method. And I also keep them on my computer too. I don't keep as many on the computer because it clutters up my computer space. But I definitely use both of the external hard drives a lot, so I like that a lot. Afterwards, now eject your card before physically removing it. I have a lot of people that'll just rip the card right out of the computer. Please don't do that. There is a button on both computers. Mac, you can just drag it to the trash can, and on the for a Windows-based computer. I'm a Mac person, if you couldn't tell, so Windows always confuses me. On a Windows, if you go to the bottom right corner, you should be able to find the SD card that's plugged in, select it, and then you can click eject. You'll get a message at the top corner saying that it's been ejected. And then once you do all that, put the card back into the camera and format the card. When your card is inside the drone or inside the camera, there's an option to format the card. That will essentially delete everything, but then make sure that the card is primed and ready to go on like the computer level, so that way it works specifically for your drone or camera. Some people don't do it. I personally don't. A lot of the times I just erase everything on the card itself and then put it back to the camera, and I haven't noticed any problems. But that's also because I rotate between maybe 3 different cameras at a time that I'm using. I've got my fun vacation, and then I've got my more professional camera that I use for my artwork and everything else. And then I have my drones. So your backup plan, I like to spell it out this way. So the SD card is your first and foremost. That's your main man of defense. That's the one that's going to get the images, save the images, and have them ready to go. The computer is your second form of defense. Your SD card, put it into the computer, and if you really want to, that's 2 forms of storage. You've got one on the SD card and one on the computer. Technically, in my mind, that would be okay, but preferably, I would like to not have anything on the SD card. I would like to have everything on the computer, and then one of my 2 options on the right. I either want to be in a hard drive or in a cloud-based solution. I like using the cloud because I feel like it makes it simple. Hard drive people, I like them a lot more personally because for me, the hard drive is tangible, and I like having something tangible. I hate passwords and logins, and I don't like cloud-based computing. It kind of scares me at the end of the day. But a lot of people, and I know for a fact, it works amazing. You get good photos, good storage, I should say, and you really don't get any deterioration of the photos. They don't lose quality. Typically, too, the image quality actually is a lot better. This is Apple and Samsung, they don't like each other. And so if you have an iPhone and you try to send a picture to Samsung, it comes out all pixelated, blurred. If you have a Samsung and you try to send a photo to iPhone, it does the same thing. The way around it is to go through cloud-based solutions. If you email somebody the photo via Google Drive, it won't diminish the quality, it won't lose anything, and they get a really nice image. So it's something to think about if you got friends who are either Team Samsung, Team Apple, and got a video they want to send. This video I just took for the polar plunge when I was looking at the drone footage, I tried to send it to my buddy who had a Samsung, and every time I sent it, I got a big red error message saying can't send, and it was only a minute long. It just wouldn't do it. But I emailed it to him through Google Drive, and he's always got it saved on his phone. So, but either one works. The other thing I like about the cloud-based solution, I get customers who do safaris all the time or go on big, expensive Europe trips. They don't necessarily want to bring a laptop with them because they're worried it gets stolen. But they know they'll have computer access kind of throughout the whole trip in different areas. So they like cloud-based solutions because then they can just save on the go, delete everything on the camera, and then have a fresh camera when they're in Italy or when they're in France or whatever this. So that's an option too. Some people don't care at all about any of that. I just want to put it in one spot and we're good. But I do recommend trying cloud-based solutions. Try Google in the top left corner. Try this Microsoft's setup. Sorry. I have used one I personally because I don't use any of the Microsoft stuff as much anymore. I'm on Team Apple for the most part, but it is available. And my personal favorite is the Creative Cloud. If you're not familiar with it, look into it. It is a monthly subscription, but you get access to Adobe Photoshop, InDesign, the Premiere, their movie editor. You get access to all this stuff, but then you also get a cloud-based solution and this thing called Videography, the selling point of that. When I was in school, we would do critique, and you would sit there and someone would put their piece on a platform and they would say, okay, let's talk about it. And for 45 minutes, the class would look at the person's work and we would discuss how it makes you feel. What do you think about it? Where are the areas of like work you did? Can you see it? And through that, you were able to kind of gain information about how other people viewed your work, and it helped you either positively or negatively work on creating something more, elevating whatever your piece was. Same thing, if you're making a movie with the drone footage that you got, you could put it on Creative Cloud and people can comment on it and give you tips or tricks, or they can just tell you, or you could ask them a question, what do you think of my transitions, or what do you think of the way that I'm coloring, etc. So now let's go over a basic tour of the drone. I have a drone with me. Let's pull it out. I've got the Mini 2 here, I believe. So the drone that we're going to be talking about today is a quadcopter. Quadcopter is pretty self-explanatory. Quad being 4 means it's got 4 propellers. So let me flip this guy out. This would be a pretty standard quadcopter. This is the Mavic Mini 2. It's been around for a few years now. They went through a Mini 1, then they went through the Mini 2, then the SE, which replaced the Mini 1 to be the more simplified one, and now they have the Mavic 3, the Mini 3 and the Mini 3 Pro. And those are the top of the line for the Mini series. And I love these ones. We'll talk about weight limitations later in the video, but one of my favorites. So different styles of drones. You got quadcopters. That's the main one, like I said, we'll be talking about. This is an example of some. So you got the Mini 3 Pro on the left corner. You got the Air 2S, which is their FPV drone, which is another different style of drone. On the very bottom, you've got the SE on one side and the Mini 2 on the other. It's a little hard to tell, but because of the propellers, there's a little different variation in color. And then you've got the Mavic 3. I believe that is the Pro model. Both the Pro and the Classic look the same. It really comes down to the features that are on the two. From what I understand, the Pro has more of the advanced features, and the Classic gets rid of those, but because it doesn't have those, it's a little cheaper. Going further into it, single rotor is one of the drone types you'll see. It looks like a helicopter. You're not going to see apt carry those. Most retail locations don't have those. You'd probably get those at like an RC shop of some sort. I get customers that look for more of the advanced air hogs, if you will. But that's really the only types that you'll see out there. Quadcopter is the most popular one. You're going to see those sold on the consumer level the most. FPV, you need goggles to fly, but typically only comes as a quadcopter, so that's things like the FPV and the Avata. Then there's the Cine drone. That's a quadcopter that has a high-quality camera and tracking feature. There is a version of that for the Mavic 3 Cine. It's very spec-oriented, so honestly, that's a lot of numbers that I don't have off the top of my head, but I can talk to you about that real quick. I see I got a question. So, let's see what I got here from Chicken. I won't pronounce the last part of the name, though. Is really fly a drone in the airspace by apt, live by Milwaukee Ave. We have O'Hare flying overhead at Milwaukee Airport. So, with the drones, oh, and I just realized my video, hold on, my screen capture is a little bit too, I apologize, guys. I'll make it smaller for you. I hope that wasn't the whole time like this. I have 2 different screens that I'm looking at when I talk to everybody. Oh man, it's really crazy. Hold on. There we go. Okay. Yes and no. It is legal to fly, but the thing I would probably recommend you first to do is if you go to the DJI website, they have on their website a geofencing map. You can type in your zip code and it'll tell you exactly the limitations you have in your area. Most of the time when an airport is in a vicinity, there is a certain mile range around the airport that's a no-fly, no-go at all, can't touch. But then on the other half of that, there is areas where you're still allowed to fly, but only at a certain height. The second you go too high, then it turns into it's an aircraft. And technically, the police that are on duty by O'Hare and Pewaukee, they can drive to your house. I had a customer who told me he lived 5 miles away from Midway, and we pulled up on the GPS, took a look at it. He actually had Midway police come to his house because he was flying, and they said, hey, we're not coming after you for any bad reasons, but we did see that there was an unidentified object flying within, I forgot how many feet in your backyard or in your vicinity. Do you know anything about that? He told him he just got a drone, was flying about it, but he was the one that then told me about the website that you can go on. DJI tells you it. So yeah, if you go to DJI's website, go to the Geofencing, type in DJI Geofencing locator, it'll then have you plug in your zip code and you'll see all that. And that was something you did.
Right, that was something that I did, and it actually allows you to open up inside my house, and it'll give you parameters. It allows
For the most part, most of these drones, they block you in. For the most part, they only let you do a certain amount depending on the area that you're in. I've heard people getting around them, but that's a great example. My student here, he had the same thing where he opened it up in the house, tried it out. His space is closer to the airport as well, but it told him on the screen as far as it was concerned. And the website shows you that as well too.
To that, the website tells you to request permission, and then clearly tells you will you be liable for any damage or whatever.
Yeah.
There's like 3 or 4 different clicks,
oh, really?
And then it tells you, and then a few seconds later it approves you or disapproves you.
Interesting. Oh, all right. Well, there you go. Yeah, the website should have everything on it for as long as it's depending. If you're trying to get more approval on it, you should be able to as well on the website. Really, that's awesome. I'm gonna put that website on here for the next class, so that way you have the link for it. But what I would recommend, DJI, go to type in DJI Geofencing, and then it gives you the option to put your zip code in and get all the information. So hopefully that helps. Chicken. I won't say your last part, but yeah, chicken. All right, back to the class. So we've got the single rotor, we've got the quadcopter, we've got the 2 different styles of quadcopter that you'll see. Obviously, you'll see standard quadcopters, and that's what something like this guy looks like. There's no sensors on here. There's a camera on the inside. I've got a little cover on it, but it's pretty basic. There's nothing much to it, and it is the low weight edition, so it's only 249 grams. We'll talk about what weight means in a second there. Hexacopter is a 6-bladed copter, and it's really used for filming. I was watching a documentary the other night on one of the newer superhero movies. I'm obsessed with Marvel, and I believe it was in Black Panther, or it was in one of the flying ones where the character's really flying hard. They use a hexacopter because the 6 blades on there mixed with one of the larger filming cameras is just unbelievable. You can put full film camera setups on these hexacopters, but the permits required for that, the cost, I mean, I think a hexacopter from the cheapest I saw was maybe $6,000-7,000 as the intro level, and I've seen them all the way up to $60,000-70,000 where you're getting something a human could stand on and it could lift you up kind of thing. So those exist too. You don't have a lot of people chomping at the bits to get those, but if you are in the wheelhouse for that, there are people out there that can do it. And then there's fixed wing rotor, and this is more of a plane experience. Again, Air Hogs is a great example. RC shops, more specialty shops will have this. But if you're someone who wants to fly something that's a plane, this will then use rotors in the back that dictate how your wings are turning and moving. So you really do get more of a plane experience with it. I've never flown one of these. I've flown basically single rotors, quadcopters. I've done the FPV once before, not with DJI, but with one of my buddy's personal ones. And a hexacopter, I've flown smaller versions, but nothing big. So let me go back one slide. So most controllers will have the same controls, but all differ. And when I say all differ, it's only because some of these controllers look a little different than others. This is my older model controller, so it's got 2 prongs that come up here. Those are your antennas. On the bottom are your clasps for the physical controllers. There are screws that pop out. Those screws go into where the physical joysticks go. Makes it for easy transportation and easy carrying. makes it also very compact. But this is what this guy looks like. You'll have the control sticks. Each stick will have different customizable settings, but one joystick will control the up and down, and then the other one will control, it'll also control rotation. The other one will control forwards, backwards, and side to side. So there's ways to call it out. I think I do it on the next one. It's like yawn and wane, and then there's another term for when it goes up and down. Just like being on a boat, everybody has different terminology instead of saying left, right, forward, back.
Aft and forward?
It's like, one of them is called like fawn, and it means that you're going side to, it's like you go one side, it's weird. I think I have it on the other slide, and I'll talk about it. Then there's the antennas. Point them outwards. These are your connection between the drone and the controller. Gimbal dial is on the back here, so you have this little rotating dial. That'll rotate gimbal, but then it also helps with a bunch of other settings on there, like shutter and focus. Sometimes it'll even control your aperture or your f-stop, depending on how high of a quality drone that you have. Record button, you'll see a little red dot on there. As soon as you start flying, some people will just fly, they'll get a bearing for where they're at. When they're ready to start recording, they'll hit the record button. Their screen will notify them that they're taking a video, and the time frame will start popping up. That gives you a good indication of everything there. Then there's the shutter and focus. Same idea, that's this button on the one side there. That'll give you refocus on what you're filming or shooting. It will also give you control over the shutter and the speed. Again, some of the intro level drones you won't see that feature, but some of the higher end ones you will. And you don't have to go too high end. I've seen them on the 800 up drones as well. The Mavic Mini 3 Pro, or the Mini 3 Pro, I don't believe has that, but I could be wrong on that one. I have to triple check. And then there's the RTH button, the return to home. Usually it has a little H button with an arrow pointed down. My one warning, do not use this if you're on a moving object. I have had two gentlemen who are big boaters. They bought beautiful drones. They wanted to take videos of their drone, of their boats. They hit the return to home button, and it goes all the way to the starting point where the boat first took off from. And so when you do that, it goes right in the water, and it does not care. So if you're going to use that RTH button, make sure you're doing it from the place that you took off. Never do it from the place that you are currently at. So you can fly the drone and you can return it back to yourself manually, but don't click the RTH button because it'll go right back where you took off from. Alright, so here we go. Here is our information. So I guess it does. Oh yeah, there it is. Throttle and yaw and pitch and roll. So your throttle takes you forward and backwards. Your pitch will take you up and down. Your roll is to the right side and your yaw is to the left side. I know it doesn't look that way, the way they lay those buttons out, but that's what that thing is called. It's the yaw and the roll. It's very goofy, but it's terminology that, again, makes sense for flyers, or for airplane guys. So, like I was saying earlier, you got your antennas, you got your gimbal dial, you've got the power button, the return to home button. Power button turns this unit on. When you're powering up the drone and the physical controller, there's two steps to it. Power the remote on and the drone on. The two should connect, and you'll actually see lights on the drone activate. Should be the same for almost all units. There's one right here for this guy. On the physical controller, it'll give you your battery indication on the top there. So that'll tell you the connection. Once the drone does connect, usually you'll see the actual rotary blades. They'll kind of move where they snap into place. You'll see them real quick, like, that's the best way I can describe it. They do one of those, and then that's how you know, and you'll see them stiffen out afterwards. They'll stop moving and they'll stay almost perfect. These will always continue to rotate. It's just the way that the force of this works. Once this starts spinning, both blades go straight out like this, and it's for safety and for portability that they roll in like that. So nothing to be weary of there. Right and left stick, you've got a USB port on the side here. When you're flying with this, it's required that you take your phone and you plug this into your phone. When you get these guys, they'll give you all the cables for it. Now, if you're getting this and let's say you don't want to use your phone, they do sell an alternate version that has an RC screen on there. The screen will then take the place of the phone, does the location services, does your geofencing. So there's no way of getting around that if that's something that you're trying to do. Really, the only way to get around geofencing is if you make your own drone or you build it yourself. Then you can kind of customize it to where you can fly without necessarily registering or doing all that stuff for the geofencing, but then now you're...
That's about to change.
Yeah, I'm sure.
September of 2023.
Really, all of them are going to have to be?
It's already in place.
That doesn't surprise me. It's for safety, it's for, concern, privacy. While the drones are awesome, especially if you're using them for the right reasons, they can also be used for negative reasons, and so it's one of those things you got to be wary of. So I could understand that. Yeah. So there you go. In September of 2023, it does not matter anymore if it is a commercially bought drone or if it's one you built yourself. You will have to register it and take care and do all that stuff so they know where you're at all times with it. So then going through, you've got LCD screen. Some of these models will have an LCD screen in the front that gives you information about the actual flight time, the battery life, all of that. There's a flight pause button, so a button that you can press that'll pause the physical flight, and then it'll stay in the same spot, but not record, not do anything, almost lower latency, so it's not destroying battery life. It still will eat the battery life up, but you can pause the flight. Now, because this doesn't have a screen on here, the buttons or the features I'm mentioning would all be on the screen that would sit in between here. Or if you had one of the RC controllers, it would be in the big screen that would be attached to this one. If you're getting any of the other drones that DJI makes, their new one folds up on the top, and then that's how you snap the phone into place. So technically your LCD screen would be up here or on the bottom, depending on your model. 5D button. There's a lot of different purposes for this from what I'm understanding. This is your video button that can do some controls. This is a settings button that can do controls. But the idea is that it's in the fifth dimension because of what you're doing with the drone. You have a lot of movement and control over it. So it's a button that's all based on movement and control. Now I haven't seen this button on every drone, and honestly I don't have a record of which drones it's on and which ones it's not. So you might see this button on there. It should be a more advanced setting control button for you. But if anyone knows more about it, please make a comment about it, and I'd love to read it out loud. Removable control sticks, we already saw those guys. They come off for easy storage. Power button, the antennas, once again, we have the return to home button on here. Control stick self-storage slot on this bottom here. You've got slots to put the actual tips into, so you don't lose them. Reverse downlink video, so in the bottom portion here, you should have a micro USB, or in this case, I have my USB-C port. I can plug this in, and if it is one of the smarter controllers, it will actually record the video and then save it onto the controller or onto the device that I'm plugging it into. So if you have the RC controller, you can plug this in, plug it into the computer, and then it should have all the video files saved on the controller and go right into there. And you can also remove the SD card too, like we talked about earlier. So you got two options. From there, we've got our mobile device clamp. That's going to be whatever's clamping the phone onto the physical controller holding it. Flight mode switch. That's your ability to switch between video, time-lapse, or photo. The gimbal dial rotates the gimbal. It also will do aperture and shutter adjustment too, depending on the model of drone you have and depending on the setting that you're on. If you're on more of an automatic setting, it probably won't have that, but if you're in more of a manual control setting, which usually gives you better speed, also speeds the battery life up a little bit faster, this can then double as an aperture or shutter button. Record button, self-explanatory. Shutter focus button, another button that's on here that'll help you focus the shutter. Let's say the drone's a little bit blurry, you're moving fast, you can slow down, hit the focus button, it'll focus in and do a better job of making sure everything's crisp in that setting. Video, power, downlink, micro USB, again, depends on the unit that you have. Very similar to the regular USB, but it's another way to actually download or take in the videos. C1 and C2 are customizable, and like I said, mine's a very basic controller, so I don't have that on here. But if it is, you can customize those to do whatever you want. So if you want it to be a video setting where you can then change the quality of the video, you can do that there. If maybe you want it to be your ability to go into active track mode or features, you can set C2 to be that as well. Fully customizable. Whatever makes your flight time easier is what you can customize those buttons to be. So now we talked a little bit earlier about geofencing. It's important to bring it up now. It's a virtual wall. The drone will not allow you to push forward or fly in this area. Typically the fencing exists around airports, government buildings, national parks, certain properties, and certain cities. Now it's important to remember that national park stuff. I had a customer who got a $4,000 fine for flying in a national park. They got it in, they were able to use it, the drone didn't geofence them, but a park ranger caught him, and guy didn't damage anything, didn't do anything, the park ranger was not having it. And that is not a pretty fine to get. So from what I understood, he is no longer allowed back at that national park ever again. I think it was in Utah. And he had to pay that $4,000. And they did threaten to take his drone away, but because he wasn't doing anything bad, they're like, it's fine. So it can get really nasty out there with these guys, so be careful where you're flying it. Remember where you're flying at, and if you're someone who can get around the geofencing, I really would warn you against doing that. Just for your safety, for others' safety, and so that way you're doing the right thing, you don't get any trouble, and you don't have to pay any extra fines. These things are awesome toys. They're very fun to play with. If you're someone who's trying to make a profession out of it, it's a really fun profession to get into because you're flying a toy basically and getting paid to do it. That's pretty cool. But there are rules, regulations against that are meant to keep people safe and keep you safe. So just remember that as the flyer or as the person watching the drone. Be careful. And then Pro versus phone controller. So this is an example of a phone controller. Pro controllers have the RC screen on there. The drone will require some form of screen to be used when flying. DJI, for example, will have you connect your phone to the controller. Other Pro controllers will have a built-in screen and they'll show you everything on there. I like both. I don't have a problem with either one. If I had to give a claim or a fight towards one or the other, probably would tell you go with the Pro controller. Pro controller won't allow or doesn't require you to have a phone on there. And being that, let's say someone calls or texts you, even if you had your phone attached, the app does a really good job blocking that stuff out so that you can keep flying without falling from the sky because someone started calling you, or just because you get a text, like it's not gonna stop your flight or anything. So there's nothing to be worried about. I have a lot of customers who get annoyed using their phone because they'll get calls, texts while they're doing stuff, and they're like, I don't want that. So that would be my claim for it. I think the Pro is nicer because you don't have to use your phone. An SD card gets inserted in the controller, so it saves your videos as well as on the drone, on the controller, that sort of thing. So I like that. For the extra, I think $200 that it costs, I think that the Pro controller is very much worth it. On screen, what you're seeing with it. So when I used to teach the GoPro and the action cameras, the screen was your main point of contact with the drone. It did everything for you, or with the camera, it did everything. Same thing goes for the drone when you're flying with your phone or with your RC controller. So it shows you the total distance between you and your drone. A lot of these drones have anywhere between, I'd say, a 4-mile to a 10-mile radius when you're flying with them. You can get 4 to 10 miles away from you, not up, but at least distance-wise. That's going to show on there, so you'll always have that ability to see. Now, if you're in an area that altitude is important because of either regulations or anything else, you'll see altitude. You'll see exactly how high the drone is from the ground. You'll have the ability to switch between photo and video on the screen. So in the one corner of the screen, you're able to toggle and switch between video and photo, and then switch back and forth between that. You get a map of the geofencing and surrounding area, so depending on where you're flying at, this will show you a map, so that way you don't get lost or you don't accidentally move into an area you're not supposed to. If you think of a video game, they usually give you that little HUD screen in the corner that shows you everything.
That's what the Pro does as
Yeah.
well. You click it
And it shows you exactly. And it's great because, again, if you're worried about flying in an area you're not supposed to, you can at least kind of get the heads up about it first. Then there's the active track, cancel, and start. I have a little clip that shows the active track on here, a little GIF to show in a little bit, so you'll get to kind of get the idea of what the active track feature does. But you can cancel and start it all on the screen. RTH is not only on the controller, but it's on the screen. If for any reason you can't click it on the screen, the button gets, or on the controller, you could do it on the screen. So you got both options. There's also a land button on the screen, which is really nice too, and that's immediate land. So land exactly where you're at. Immediate land would be great if you're someone who is on a boat, you took off from the pier, you can't do RTH because it's going to go right back to the water where you took off. Now you can bring it by you, get it real close to landing, and then hit immediately land, and then it'll drop. So that's a nice thing. So I like that one. Now, understanding permits and the FAA. I think this is the biggest thing that we need to understand. There are only two permits that there are two permits you can purchase. This is from everything I have read about it and found out. And if anybody else has other information, please do tell me. So if your drone is under 249 grams, you do not need a permit of any kind to do this unless you're doing commercial work for business or for pay. If it's under 249 grams, you can basically bring it anywhere you want in the United States, as long as you're not in the areas that are restricted via the geofencing. But for most other countries, 249 grams is the limit as well. So places like Japan, I want to say France, Spain, most of Europe, London, all of those places you can actually bring one of these guys and you won't get into any trouble. You don't need any extra licensing. You don't need anything special. 249 grams is kind of the universal. If you're under that, if you're at 249 or less, you're technically not a threat as an aircraft. So there's really nothing to worry too much about. You can be a menace. That's a whole different story as far as how you fly and if you're being nice or whatever have you. But at least under 249, if you're flying in a zone that, you know, if you're flying, technically the government or police, they can't come up to you and tell you to bring it down because you're under that legal limit. And as long as it's legal in that country, you're fine. Registering your drone if it's above 249 grams. If you're not above 249 grams, you don't necessarily need to register it, so that's another rule to think about. But if you are, it can be accessed on the FAA.gov website. Costs about $5. Includes a course and information. After completion, you must write out the permit number on the drone. So they'll give you a number, a registration number. You know, I've had people that have literally wrote it with Sharpie right across the top. They usually don't have to get another permit or anything, so that's all they do. I have people that'll get a little label printer and just print one out. It shouldn't affect the weight of your drone or do anything else. If you are worried about the weight, and given that you're at 249 exactly, you can always write it out with Sharpie. There should be no issue with that. Now, Part 107 is for your commercial base use. And so you pay $175, you take a course on flying, and then after completion, you can now do commercial or business-based work with your drone. That's how that's how we understand it, right? Anything that you've read differently?
No, the same. Well, it goes not to get into under the 249,
yeah.
How somebody else explains it. It's all on the intent.
Okay.
You do commercial and business with under 249.
Yeah.
It depends on your intent.
Ah.
So the example is if you're flying, you know, you're flying over a football game to record your son.
Yeah.
That's perfectly fine, but you're my friend and tell me, can you do that for me? Now
yeah.
the intent is
for like a business. Okay.
So
interesting.
That was interesting.
Okay.
You do that on the intent.
Interesting. All right, there you go. So it's in the intent as far as when it comes to the actual needing to register for your 107. So if you're doing it for fun, you're doing it for, I like how you use that. So if you're, let's say your kid's playing sports and you want to fly over and you want to record the game and do this stuff, you can absolutely do that. That's not a problem. But if someone asks you to do it and tries to give you a little bit of side cash on there or something, then there's the intent of business, and then you need it. So you can do it like, so for my example, I used my drone when I was flying for the Chicago Pole Plunge. I did that for myself. I did that just to get images for it. It's a non-for-profit, so no one's making any business. I didn't get any money out of it, so I was completely fine. I flew how I flew. So there you go. Okay, good to know. These are the only two that I found. Now, if you're going to get into the crazier hexacopters or rotary planes, anything where now you're doing something a little bit out of the wheelhouse of the quadcopter, I might look on the FAA website and see if there's any regulations with that. But at least for the most part, these are the most important two that you need to know about. It's the Part 107, that's for business or commercial work, and then your standard register of drone, which is $5. From what someone told me, it was a YouTube video to watch, but someone else just told me there was some reading points that you had to do. It wasn't anything fancy.
Small, like paragraph or two. That's it.
It's not that then. No. So nothing complicated, nothing fancy to get into it, and it usually doesn't take more than about 10 minutes of your time. So basics of drone footage. One of the things I like to show is just ways I think that people can get good clean video and take really nice shots while still getting used to it and understanding the drone. A lot of things that make drones really cool. The footage that you can do with it, the way I like to think about it is drones will do things that humans can't. And that's the easiest way to put it. So the first thing, use active track if it's available. So on the screen here we can see see in this little GIF that this is what the drone would look like as you're flying. You can see all the things we talked about as far as height, distance from you and the controller. So you got altitude, distance, you got your little geo map in the corner, and then you've got some guys playing either frisbee or they're playing soccer. You can see a little blue box around one guy, and if this go a little bit longer, you actually see the drone start to move, but it's tracking that guy. And so for whatever distance this person's recording at, there is it's keeping this distance from the person. Now if the person starts to move forward, the drone will actively push forward and follow. If the person starts to run towards the drone will back up and then start to continue to record. So you have the two options on there when it comes to using active track, but it's a really nice way. I had a gentleman who bought a drone from me and was going to California to ride motorcycles, and what he did was he bought, at the time it was the Mavic Air 2S, because it was the only one in his price point that had the track feature that he really wanted. He was able to record himself driving down the coast in California where the ocean view is there. It was a really cool video. He emailed it to me. I was like, that's really fancy. But yeah, all he did was set it to record. He put it in his little saddlebag on his motorcycle, and he just started taking off, and the drone followed over him with no problem. I have people that do it with boats. I've got people that do it with dogs. Sports is a great example. There's a lot of times you can use active track, and the drone will do all the work for you, and you don't have to push yourself to do any extra features. Another version of active track, this is probably one of the better ones that I have, very similar to what my friend did with his motorcycle. You can see it's on a loop, but this car's moving forward and the drone is keeping footage of it the entire time, and it's keeping it in view the whole time. So use the feature. It's definitely awesome to use if you have it on a drone, and it'll definitely increase the, I'd say, quality of the video, because it's less of you having to do things and be shaky with it. You're allowing the drone to use its AI and its computer. Pan out and get whole environments when you're shooting. A lot of the times with physical point-and-shoot cameras, we have a tendency to get right up on the object and take a picture of it, and it's fine. But it does get rid of the illusion of this bigger space, and I think one of the coolest parts about drones is it captures space, its environment. It shows off things that we necessarily can't get to with our own two legs, or maybe we can't get to with the speed of what a normal human would do, but a drone can, because it can fly fast. So in the case of this, we've got this beautiful shot of the mountains. We could go real close to those mountains and see it, but as we're panning out and going backwards, we have a beautiful waves coming in. We have the mountains in the background with a bit of a sunset going above them. So it's very cinematic and beautiful. The sky almost looks like it's not moving. You're getting a better, what's the word I'm looking for? You're getting a better handle of your environment using your drone. Film environment first, then pan into subject. So what I really like about this one, it's very subtle. We've got two gentlemen hiking on the one bottom part of the mountain, and while that's cool because they're hiking this gorgeous mountain, the real beauty is the rest of the landscape around us. So filming the environment first, giving snippets of people that we see, it's easy ways to entice the viewer that's watching to be interested in the overall view, but then give more context to where these people are. It could be nothing crazy that you're filming. Maybe you're on vacation and you're not in a national park, you're in a state park of some sorts. You want to record the hike, but rather than just start immediately with hike, you first start with the mountains and the area that you're surrounded with and the nature, and then you move into the people hiking or whatever's happening. It's really nice. And then use the FPV to hug your environment. Some people get a little nauseous with this kind of stuff, but I think what's, again, great about drones is that we as humans can't do this. Unless you're Superman and you can attach a GoPro to your head, you're not really going to fly and be able to see the view like you are with this. Something like this, the person's hugging the rocks pretty close, which is scary, but it's exciting, it has movement to it, you get a different view of this mountain that you've probably never seen before, and at least to my knowledge, I don't know how many humans are getting up there to climb this kind of environment nowadays. Using the drone to not only pan out and get the whole environment, but to get a little bit tighter in on shots and to use the environment's natural kind of pathway or natural build. As you can see, he's going on the top, or she is going on the top of this mountain over here. So it's getting the very jagged and most peak part of it. Again, something that's not easy for a regular everyday human to get, but a drone that can fly 7 miles in the air, probably better bet. Bigger than life images and scenery. Like I said, pan out, but cool with the drones is you can take photos. So this is a trail that's, I believe, California, yeah, I think it actually might be California from what I read when I did this. Either way, you've got the entire stretch of road here. That's probably over a mile worth of roads that's there, but you wouldn't be able to get a picture like this from any other type of view than using a drone. Maybe if you were in a helicopter, yes. Odds of you getting in a helicopter with a nice camera that's able to take the picture versus flying a drone 300, 400, 500 feet up into the air and then getting an aerial shot. It's two different things. But using this, you get this larger than life effect. You can see things at a more microscopic level, makes things more interesting, and just makes it feel bigger than life. And then this is still one of my most favorite and practical reasons for a drone: wedding photography or for group and gathering shots. If you've got a big party that's coming up, you've got a large family. Where I went to high school, every year we would do actually this like walkathon event. We would raise money, do all this stuff. We would take our big school photo. And so we'd line up in the football field, and before drones were more accessible, it would be the fire department would come by. We had our local photographer. He'd climb up on the ladder, and he would stand up there like 100-something feet above everybody and take his picture. It was really cool. Getting the fire department involved, getting him involved, getting all this stuff, it overcomplicated things. I'm sure it wasn't cheap to do that unless they donated their time, which I would have felt bad taking the fire department away from real emergencies for a high school picture. But in my last year, they had a drone that they were able to use, and they flew it up there, and they took the picture, and the photos were okay for the time. Nowadays, the drones are so much better that they'd be better 10, 12 years ago that happened. Looking at something like this, if you've got a large group of people that you're trying to get a picture of, you're not going to get the tops of everybody's heads. Having people line up on height is silly. You get a drone, fly it up in the air, and you can get a nice group aerial shot. And there is something to be said of taking a downward shot with the drone. You get a lot of landscape in this one, you get a lot of beauty out of it, but you can really encompass the large group or the large environment that you're in, which again, I think is the coolest part about drones, is you take this small piece and you can really encapsulate or get this large environment in a small picture or in a small video. I think it's a really awesome and underutilized effect, especially in photography. Videography, I think a lot of people are on the money with this. They're using drones a lot. I think for photographers, there's this hesitation because there's so much control with a manual DSLR mirrorless camera. There's not nearly as much control with something like a drone. Not in a bad way, not for lack of trying, but I feel photographers are much more picky because that's something they love, is the control of the camera. Whereas cinematographers, it's really always up to the lighting, your environment, where you're at, and I think drones really have a fun time with that because you can be in any situation flying one of these and you're going to get some cool content if you can find the ways of using the drone to the best of its abilities. Last thing I'll put on here is to use your phone to edit videos. The coolest part of any of this stuff, whether you're using the RC controller on the left that has the apps and software that you can download, the DJI Go app, or if you're just using the physical phone on the actual controller, you have the ability to edit and change things there too. So both are really cool, and if you're someone who wants to get into the editing of photos and videos, could be a nice option for you without having to get onto a computer or get into some bigger software. A little less clumsy, a little more accessible, but again, for some people, they prefer to do things on the desktop and the computer. I always like to tell people the same thing with cameras. Most cameras have Wi-Fi and Bluetooth built into them nowadays, so you're able to actually transfer photos from your camera to your phone. I don't think it should be your main source of doing that, but at the end of the day, I think it's a really nice feature to have, and it gives you more control over the product that you own and a little bit more flexibility as far as editing and the quality.
That DJI Go
I believe it's the ability on the RC, and they should be able to download that app. I don't remember the exact. It should have the setup on there. When you go into the controller, you can find that in the settings, and then it should tell you exactly what you need to do. I haven't used it personally myself yet, but I watched a few videos on YouTube, and it's pretty. I don't want to say self-explanatory, but it's pretty simple once you do it once. And then lastly, I talk about some of these recommended accessories. If I'm being honest with people, and I try to do this my best with cameras because I feel people get very geeked out on merch that you can get and all the accessories, get your drone, get your controller, get a memory card. Those are the only three things that you actually need to fly. The drone, the controller, and the memory card. Most drones will come with a controller, they come with the battery. The only thing they don't come with is the SD card, so get that. If you want to get fancy, most drones have a Fly More kit combo where you can get the extra batteries, the extra propellers, a charging hub in a bag, and it costs significantly less than trying to piece it all together and buy it separately. I know for the Mavic Mini 3 Pro, there's one that's $189 and there's one that's $249. For the Avata, there's a Fly More combo kit that I believe costs like $200, gives you the extra battery, etc. So there's a bunch of stuff that you can get for this guy. Bags are great. Extra batteries are always needed. You're only looking at about 30 minutes of flight time. So depending on where you go, that might not be enough, and that might not be, you might want to fly for more. Charging hub is great. Most of these guys, when you want to charge the battery on the drone, you got to plug it into the physical drone itself, not the battery or anything. So I like that you can do that. Extra memory cards, like I said, you should always have 2 memory cards on you. It's a given. If there's anything I could recommend, having multiple of its memory cards. Get a lens cleaning kit. I was flying in the snow not long ago, and when I brought the drone down, I could just see the frost and the snow that built up on there. So it was really nice having a clean cloth and a spray kit that I could just spray down, wipe it down, and then throw it back up. Same thing with my personal cameras. Have your external hard drive for the photos and videos. Get filters. A lot of these drones will actually sell filters separately, so you can change for a polarizing, neutral density, just a standard UV. They've got all that stuff. And then classes and workshops. Go to classes, go to workshops on them, but if there's anything I can tell you more than the most important thing out there is to practice. It's to go out, fly, try the drone out. Don't be scared. There's a lot of people that get very hesitant when they get this because they're like, I don't want to screw it up. But at the same time, you're never going to learn unless you try. So fly, try different environments, learn to go through trees, learn to navigate in different ways, and overall it'll definitely benefit and help as you're going. And that is all I got for you. So that was my last class for February. So next month, March, for everybody who's watching online, some people here for the camera classes, March 2nd is going to be my intro to cameras. For anybody who hasn't been to one before, we talk about the very basics of photography, using automatic on the camera, how to shoot through, and basically the same way that I talk in this one about how to take good video, we talk about how to take good photos, what to be looking for, how to frame things up, the rule of thirds, which is a nice one. So if that interests you, I definitely would recommend. I saw that I had one question. I answered that for chicken. Won't pronounce the last